Welcome back to Amtower Off Center on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM. I'm Mark Amtower. My guests today are Rita Walston, Immix Group, Ralph Renzi, WTOP and WFED, and Lisa, the lovely and talented Lisa Dezzutti of Market Connections. I do that to embarrass her. And she
you
doesn't
call me
embarrassed.
Lovely and talented.
No, that's next segment. Next segment. All right. So venues. I mentioned early on that the era of the mega show is dead. It's not probably dead. It's dead. It's not serving a purpose in the market. But that's not to say that events are gone. By no means is that accurate. They seem to be growing, and I think part of your study indicates what on this?
Yeah, most certainly, event attendance is down, but it's really the mix of events that people are attending that has changed. And a lot of that is from the pressure of travel restrictions, declining budgets, not having money. So they are going to smaller local events. So contractors are having to look at how do they reach people. Some of them have started doing more what I will call road shows, where they take their show on the road and they're traveling around the country to their customers, various bases on the defense side. They may be doing an event on a base within an agency. They may be doing something at a local hotel, but it is essentially going where your customer is and not counting on your customer to travel to these bigger shows, which are just no longer successful.
Okay. Rita, you guys are responsible, again, for a fairly significant chunk of money, but you work with literally hundreds of companies. What types of events are most productive for you and your partners?
We're seeing when they're very focused events, you want them to be very editorial, again, avoiding that sales pitch. The type of event that I've seen to be very effective is to go where the government is. You mentioned road shows, Lisa. We'll do technology days on the base, incorporating some aspect of training in there. What can your attendees learn while they're there? What can you have them walk away with that they didn't come with, some sort of knowledge? Also blending multiple manufacturers. Instead of having a single manufacturer event, having more than one, complementary manufacturers, because you're more likely to get government editorial speakers, you're more likely to get government attendees, their managers are more likely to approve their attendance if it doesn't look like they're endorsing one manufacturer over another. So what we see that really works is go where the government is, go where your customer, your prospect is located, hone it, incorporate some training, and try to be there with multiple manufacturers instead of just one manufacturer. You don't want a sales pitch.
The other piece to that, Rita, which I'm sure you all have seen, is that having a customer give a case study can also be very effective, or talk about the solution that's working for them. Absolutely.
A lot of times, I know in the federal space, they're not always permitted to do that. Mm-hmm. If they are, that's absolutely...
It's gold.
It's gold.
Right.
Use it wisely.
Right.
Yeah. Ralph, I speak about 30, 35 times a year, and I'd swear about half the times when I go, there's Jason or Tom or somebody's there, doing interviews on the side. But Federal News Radio has taken a more active role in sponsoring various events.
Right.
What role are you playing here now?
So we have two roles. One role is our editorial side, which is, like you just said, getting out and having our journalists out at events, not only from a marketing standpoint like industry is looking to get so we can have an impact, but also gathering content which derives into our own thought leadership. These journalists are experts in their field, and this is a great way to get thought leadership and be the thought leader in their own space. Second view is industry, and what Rita just said is so true. The number one question we get when it comes to events, when we're talking to industry clients, is how many government attendants are at the event. It's not just that we're at an event. Who's there that is our end user? And that's become a crucial point. Once again, it goes to the data. 70%, I think, is what we see tossed around as being a valuable number of attendees that are of government that need to be at an event for it to be deemed successful. And I think, Mark, there's a few things that are influencing the changing of events. Resources, like we talked about earlier, shrinking budgets and how you're allocating your marketing dollars is very, very important. Time management. Who has time to go to a 3-day event in another city and that kind of thing? We're all pressed for time now. So shooting downtown, metro accessible, jumping out for a few hours is much more efficient way of use of our time. And then, Rita, you mentioned it, training. We're seeing a lot of continuing education, and we're seeing that drive events. Can I get CE credits for some things that I'm working on if I'm an end user?
That's one of the criteria feds need to get out of the office.
There you go.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. There you go.
So, and Rita, this is going to be geared towards you, and Lisa, your study may bear this out. There's 28 cities outside of Washington, D.C. that carry a federal executive board, which means that there is a cluster of federal activity around that major metropolitan area, and most likely a federal employment body of in excess of 20,000 people, up to, in some cities, over 60,000 people. Do you take your things to those? Let's take Denver, for instance. There's only about 30,000 feds in Denver, but there's about 32 or 33 agencies at the Denver Federal Center. And talk about visiting. How do you take your customers out there on your road shows? Or
Absolutely. And what I try to tell our clients is, when you're going to have a live event, it's a very important component for that face-to-face networking. That, yes, all of these other webinars, content marketing help, but it cannot replace that face-to-face time. So you need to really make the maximum use of that if you go there. And it's also about level setting expectations. I've worked with clients sometimes, and I'll say, okay, if we're going to Denver, if we're going to San Antonio, or if we're going out to Fort Huachuca, you have to realize that we're going to hone our message. It's going to be a very select audience. It's going to be a smaller audience, but it's quality over quantity, and you have to make it count. And usually it ends up with the client saying, oh, no, I got that. I said, okay, so what defines success for you? And they may say, well, hey, if we get 75 to 125 people there, I'm happy. I'm like, no. I'm talking about getting 15 to 25 maybe, which I think for some of these outside DC locations is a good, solid attendance number if they are the right people.
Right.
And then how do you leverage that? How do you make sure that when you do get them there, you're making it worth their time to have attended?
Yeah, it's, and the big era going away, in the early 90s, legitimately there were well over 50,000 people attending FOSSE. But the vast majority of them were collecting tchotchkes. Okay, they
in those giant bags.
But you walk out of the convention center and you'd see piles of giant bags, and probably full of tchotchkes. But it's never been a numbers game from my perspective. It's a quality game. Exactly what you just said. Are the right people going to be there? And that's where it is. So, Lisa?
No, I think absolutely. You've got to make sure you're reaching the right people. But the other point I wanted to add on region, feds in the region, is you can't peanut butter your marketing message, because often the needs of federal decision makers in the region are different than what you see here in the Washington area. So federal marketers need to keep that in mind and understand what those differences are.
That's a great point. You mentioned Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Those of us that have ever been to Sierra Vista or Fort Huachuca, that's about as extremely different as the Washington, D.C. metro as you can get.
Yes.
So that's a great point. And then what are they doing at Fort Huachuca that helps you with your resources and message delivery?
A lot.
Yeah, a lot. That's right.
So it's all about doing that homework. It isn't just about wash, rinse, repeat. Identify the goal. If you're going to Fort Huachuca or Denver or San Antonio, what is the goal there? What do you want to achieve? And then make sure that you are leading up to that.
Yeah. Anything else on events? Okay, we're going to take a break. You're listening to Amtower Off Center on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com.